to our first speaker, Judy Tarling, who is going to be talking about Wittenberg and Rhetoric. Thank you very much. So, Judy Tarling.
Thank you. 20 years ago, I spoke to the Gambler Society shortly after my book, Weapons of Rhetoric, came out. 20 years, I can't believe. And it was all new and exciting for us all, I think, including me. But since then, I've obviously done a lot of... I haven't been lazy and rested on my laurels. I've been doing a lot of work, and my latest enthusiasm is for these 16th century rhetoric books, which chime so much with all English culture in the way of Shakespeare and the English Bible. So today mainly will be about speaking, not about music. We're going to have some music at the end to round it off, but what I want you to do is listen and see by speaking if you can get any useful information for yourself. I want you to take away things that you can find useful in playing music. It may not be everything, you may only remember one thing I said that happens, but that's my approach. I'm looking for things that are useful. It's not everything. Some things will only apply to poetry or oratory or something. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to talk for a bit about the books, then I'm going to ask for volunteers to speak. And I'd be grateful if you do it quickly, because I don't want to spend time with modesty silences. So when I say I want to speak, hands up, right, straight away. So my title comes from this little book here, this little 17th century pocket book in English. And it just shows that then, as now, people were trying to understand rhetoric. People who hadn't had the advantage of a good classical education. And it does what I'm trying to do today, is to explain it to people who don't know a lot about it. So it is not enough to speak, but to speak true. This is what Shakespeare said. And I think what he means there is that we have to understand what we're writing or reading before we can transmit that to the listeners. So we can't just assume that reading or playing music, but that the audience will understand. We have to understand what we're speaking in order to transfer this to... So, next slide. Okay. These are in the Weapons of Rhetoric book, I concentrated mainly on the classical sources, although I did include a bit about the 16th century books. And these are the three main sources for the classical rhetoric. And all the books that come after this, I could say that I haven't found anything new that they say. It's incredible. Especially, Quintilian it's like everything that you could possibly want to know about rhetoric. And the later books just reiterate and transcribe those and put them in their own period. I found this in an exhibition at the Society of Royal Physicians. So John Dee, I hope everyone's heard of John Dee, he was Elizabeth's first astrologer. So he was very involved with court culture and astrology and so on. But I was really amazed to see this book in the exhibition with all his annotations. Fantastic. In Latin, of course. Annotations in Latin as well. So. I'll introduce you now to the books that I'm going to be using to quote from. And most of these books were used in the classroom or by the general population, and most were in English, except this Erasmus book, the first one, was studied in Latin and written specifically for the new curriculum at St Paul's in 1509, and became, this was standard curriculum during the grammar school foundations that happened throughout the 16th century. Of course, after the dissolution of the monasteries, the educational system had to be sort of reinvented to an extent. So Erasmus was really critical in this book, and it's just a wonderful book. It's so funny, and it's got a lot of humour and useful things in it. So I'll be quoting this one. Henry Peacham, not to be confused with Henry Peacham the Younger, the elder. A lot of people read the Younger. What's it? Something Gentleman's Companion or something. Garden of Eloquence. And this image of the garden and flowers and so on keeps coming up in all the rhetorical books, the flowers of rhetoric, this decorative image that they use. And Peacham generally draws on the Bible for his examples. I mean, the Bible was easily to hand and it was stuffed with rhetoric, so that it wasn't just for religious reasons, although having the Bible in English meant that a lot of people could read it who hadn't been able to before. And a lot of these books, like Peacham and this one, the Mystery of Rhetoric, were written to explain the Bible to people who weren't used to using figural language. So they were frightened that people would misunderstand and also get the wrong idea about expressions like the Lamb of God. Who knows what the Lamb of God is? We know because we're used to, or things like that. Man is a dog. Man is a dog. And all these things they thought that the ordinary people wouldn't be able to understand, and so these books were partly written packed with scriptural examples, some of which you'll be reading in a minute. And what I love about Peacham is that he gives you uses and abuses. So he gives you where to use this, the best places, the best context, and then where it doesn't work. And this is fantastic because he's thinking all the time about the audience and the effect that the construction has on the audience. It's just brilliant. So also great to read. And then Putnam, he's really reading about poetry. So it's not specifically about oratory, but there's a lot of crossover between oratory and poetry, so we should borrow ideas. He's a really mad, interesting person, extraordinary, colourful life. But he was very involved with the Elizabethan educators who were very close to Elizabeth. So we know he was right up there at court. He got in trouble with the church, as did many of them. But he's an advocate for using English, not Latin. So he invents English names for his figures, which is great because it helps us understand the Latin names when we see the paragraph. Now, another important book is this one, again read in the classroom, Reynold, and this time we have it translated into English via Latin from the Greek. So it was 4th century Greek textbook that came into Latin, and then it was used throughout Europe. This book was, anybody who went to school in the whole of Europe, Spain, Germany, England, Holland, they all read this book. And it offers these 14 templates for composition. So you have to tick off your templates. So you start at the beginning of the book with the sort of easier ones, and then you progress with. So this is what an exercise for discussion of a fable or saying. So you praise the author, expound the meaning, show why he said it, compare the matter to a contrary, frame a similitude, so compare and contrast, that's the standard essay, isn't it? It's compare and contrast. Show an example of who, of the like that spake the like or did the like. gather testimonies, knit the conclusion. So you can see how you're looking at an idea from all these points of view. So you've got a central idea and you're bringing other things against it to judge it. And all these essays had got the theme of a moral purpose, and very much geared towards the building of a commonwealth, political. They all had this political message of trying to build the commonwealth from Elizabeth and then further into the 17th century. The word commonwealth is used all the time when giving advice about competition. And then you get examples, which are very great to read and very entertaining. So, next slide. So these are just a couple more books of figures, Sherry and Sassenbrotus. Sherry read in English in the schools, and Sassenbrotus is a German writer, just about figures, and written in Latin, so they'll be reading this in Latin. And what was interesting is he's also teaching music, and who do we know who was a music teacher who also had to teach Latin in Germany? Was a very well-known person.
Bach.
Yes. So this obviously was a standard procedure in Germany to have the music and the Latin taught together. I mean, this Sassenbrotus was one early example of that. He's 16th century writer. And here's Wilson, another courtier, friends with these great educators, Ascham and Cheek. An extraordinary life. I mean, he went abroad during the reign of Queen Mary, and because of what he'd written in the Rhetoric book about religion, he got tortured. Absolutely frightful. And eventually he escaped imprisonment in Rome when I think there was a riot and a fire, and he managed to get out of prison and get back to England. It's really incredible. Then, finally, the Le Faucheur, a very, very useful book, later 17th century, but translated into English in the 18th century. So that's extremely useful about delivery, which some of the early books are not. They're really about writing, not so much about delivery, except Peacham does give us quite a few clues. But that's what I was always looking for, people who told us about how to get it over, not just how to compose it. So what is rhetoric after all? Persuasion is the word people most commonly say, and it's a balance of information and emotion, and this is very important. The emotional side is what people don't like. They don't like being manipulated. They don't mind finding out facts and information, but as soon as you put the pressure on the emotions, but that's what we want, that's what we're looking for. And delivery, this is a standard phrase, voice, countenance and gesture. So it's not just your voice, it's your face and the body movements, the rhetoric of the body. So Smith, this little book, he says rhetoric's divided into the garnishing of speech, which is the composition, and then the garnishing of the manner of utterance, and that's your pronunciation. So it's the writing and then the delivery combined. They have to work together. So just reverting to music for a moment, Monteverdi, I love this, in the preface to the 8th book, The Madrigals, he writes about these 3 important things, and rhetoric comes first. Rhetoric, harmony and rhythm. But of course you have to remember that rhetoric has rhythm, and it also has harmony of a sort. So in a way he's it's a double blind. But I suppose when he's thinking about rhetoric, he's thinking of vocal music, with the words specifically, and the music is the harmony and the rhythm. So I looked for words which we have in common, rhetoric and music, and I found quite a lot here. I found these words in the rhetoric books. So articulation, phrase, cadence, delivery, repetition, figure, harmony, melody, symphony, that's all in a rhetoric book. So it just shows how they're thinking musically. The overlap is huge. So Putnam says, to speak and write harmonically, a kind of musical utterance, congruity in sounds pleasing the ear. Poetry is current and slipper upon the tongue, with tunable and melodious as a kind of music, which cannot but please the hearer very well. It appeals to the ear, the gateway to the mind. That's your emotional message. Getting to the mind, that's what they're after. Beecham says the same thing, apt speech working in the mind of the hearer by pleasant proportion and, as it were, sweet and musical harmony. He's talking about speech, you know, so he's using all these musical words. Then he says, Beecham in his introduction, to affect eloquence without the discretion of wisdom is to handle a sweet instrument of music without skill. So he's saying you have to know what you're doing. It's no good just playing, you have to understand. You have to have wisdom to understand what you're doing. And this is what the musicians say about rhetoric, the other way around. So here's the Beecham the younger. Hath not music her figures the same which rhetoric? What is a revert but her anti-strop? Her reports but sweet and aphorisms. Her counterchange of points and timidabile. And Mace. Fancies of 3, 4, 5 and 6 parts of the organ, all of which were so many pathetical stories, rhetorical and sublime discourses, subtle and acute argumentations, so suitable and agreeing to the inward secret and intellectual faculties of the soul and mind. To set them forth according to their true praise, there are no words sufficient in language. Music shows as much wit and variety as can the best orator. And I would this were better known and more put into practice than by many it is. Do you see what you say? He's saying music's better. I think he's saying music's better than oratory. Don't you read that? Because it says more. It can get to parts that words don't reach. But this is marvellous. Rhetorical sublime discourses. So thank you, Mace. Wilson, going back to the rhetoric book. What should a man do with a weapon that knows not how to use it? What though one have mountains of gold? What avail of things have such heaps if you cannot tell how to bestow them? A man without speaking skill is like a jewel locked in a casket and the key thrown away. I love that, So, if you're a 16th century courtier, you have to speak to get your point across. It's no good sitting there looking nice and not speaking. Speaking is your method of communication, and you're worthless unless you have this skill. So I'm going to now explain a few technical terms. Figure is a word we use in music, but I don't like using it because in rhetoric it means something slightly different. And a figure in rhetoric is used for ornamenting plain speech. And the figures hold that potential for emotional power. And all the writers say if you use too many, the effect is lost. So you have to be really careful about how you use the figures so they don't overdose you with emotion, as it were, because you just get tired out and stop listening. So you have to place them in very carefully positioned places in your discourse for them to have their power. Now, a figure, in music we generally think of a figure as being a theme or something, don't we? We draw a figure. But in rhetoric, to be a figure, we need more than one thing. We need two things. And that creates a relationship between what you start with and what you present. Do you remember that Reynold list of compare and contrast? So a thing on its own is nothing, but as soon as you put the thing next to it, to compare, to contrast, to alter, then you've got a figure. Okay, so we're always looking for two things to compare, to have a figure. So in music, I'm really worried about this tendency to over-ornament just for the sake of it, especially in repetitions, because in rhetoric, if you have a repetition, that is the figure, that is the ornament. And if then you add all musical ornaments to that, you've lost the rhetorical figure. This is one of my main concerns. So people think, oh, there's so much repetition in this piece, and get bored, you know. So they start adding musical ornamentation just for the sake of it, and thereby destroying the effect of the musical figure. So watch out for that, and I hope you'll be on my side and try and counteract any tendency. So there are two sorts of figures. These are all standard in the rhetoric books. The word play, which is similar sounds, designed to catch the ear. So they're just literally sound effects. So you could say despised, rejected, something like that. That's a figure to catch the ear because it has the same ending. Despised, rejected. Something like that. Any little word comparisons. Then you get the other sort of figure, which is longer sequences, constructions, using repetition, amplification, and these are the ones that get to your emotions. So the other ones are just to keep you trekking along, listening happily, catching the ear, and these are the ones that really go to your heart. And the other technical term I want to explain is copia. And if you read any 17th century text, you'll find this word, and you may not have understood what it meant, because I didn't. I've read it lots of times. So you might see copy, which is the plural, copia, and you might think, oh, that means copy out something. And you haven't really understood what it is. So Erasmus's book is based on copia, which is variation, endless variation of a theme, repetition of a word or idea with some alteration, and that holds the listener's attention, but immediate repetitions are one sort of figure, and repetitions with small differences are another. So we'll come on to this in a minute. My examples. And it sounds ridiculous when overdone, which is what Shakespeare does sometimes, to make the audience laugh. But of course we don't understand the joke really. But in a minute we will be speaking examples. Now I'd like someone to speak this example of copia. Hands up! Speak! Quick! Harry, you do it.
You must excuse me, Master Robert Shallow. I will not excuse you. You shall not be excused. Excuses shall not be admitted. There is no excuse shall serve. You shall not be excused.
Right. Do you understand copia? Everyone now understands copia. But that would have made an audience laugh, because they'd have been doing that in school, 10 hours a day, writing as how many variations can you write on a sentence? And this in Love Labour's Lost, there's this schoolmaster called Holofernes, who's also very pedantic and does this copia thing. So somebody else read Holofernes. Yes, go on, Brooke.
The deer was, as you know, in blood, sandwith, ripe as the pond water, who now hangeth like a jewel in the ear of Calum, the sky, the welcome, the heaven, and anon falleth like a crab on the face of terror, the soil, the land, the earth.
Okay, so we've got how many? We've got terror, soil, we've got 4 for earth, and then another 4 for heaven. So the exercise would have been how many words can you find for the earth, and then you hopefully have a list this long. And Erasmus says that is your storehouse. You store up your words so that you've got ready words to use in a particular situation. He said, you don't just take the top of the heap. You just don't take the one on the top of the heap. You look down the heap and find just the right one. So you're keeping a notebook, probably, if you're a schoolboy or even if you're grown up, with useful expressions that you hear other people say, and you write them down, and then you incorporate those into your own speaking, and gradually build up your eloquence with the addition of this wide vocabulary and also way of expressing yourself. So this is really, and then Holofernes. Does anyone know who Holofernes was in the story of Holofernes?
Judith and Holofernes.
Judith, yes. What happened to him?
She chopped his head off.
He chopped his head off. It's a really well chosen name, in my opinion. Judith chopped his head off because he was so annoying.
There are lots of paintings of that.
There are fantastic paintings. Judith chopping off Holofernes' head. Okay, next, here's some more copia from Erasmus. So somebody read this? Somebody read it?
So, a pure heart.
Read the top line, please, first.
Yes. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Copia alternatives from Erasmus. The same body dressed in different clothes. A pure heart, an unsullied heart, a heart free from stain, a heart untainted by sin, a purified heart, a heart that is washed, a heart white as snow.
And so on. Then you'd be required to do 20 more to really work this idea. That idea of the same body dressed in different clothes, that's such a good image. Because you've got, whatever you've got, a theme or an idea, whatever you do to it, it should be recognisably the same. So if you can change it a little bit, but it's still the thing you started with. So in a musical idea, you could change a rhythm, change a note, change an interval, transpose it, and it's subtly different, but it's recognisably the same thing. And I think that's what Erasmus is getting at. That I just love that idea. So whenever you get a theme that's being altered, think of that, the same body in different clothes. Brilliant. So figures. Now, when people start reading about rhetoric, they get absolutely obsessed with the names of all these figures because it is absolutely fascinating. But Wilson says there was a learned man of such excellency being asked what was such a figure and such a trope in rhetoric. I cannot tell, quoth he, but I am assured if you look in the book of my orations, you shall not fail to find them. So that although he knew not the name of such and such figures, yet the nature of them was so familiar to his knowledge that he had the use of them whensoever he had need. So we do it all the time. I'm sure you all use figures of rhetoric in your daily life, but you're not aware of them. You don't know the names of them. Well, you don't need to. That's the thing. So Putnam says, the ornament we speak of is given to it by figures and figurative speeches, which be the flowers and the colours that a poet setteth upon his language by art, as the embroiderer doth his stone and pearl or passaments of gold upon the stuffed princely garment, or as the excellent painter bestoweth the rich orient colours upon his table of portrait. And if you've read Cicero, the orator, half that language is coming from Cicero. He hasn't just made it up, but Cicero talks about the flowers in the field and the rich orient pearl and everything. They're the same phrases, but just translate. I mean, Putnam doesn't acknowledge them, obviously, but they're coming from the same place. And Putnam says, unlike our daily talk, poetry is decked out and set with all manner of fresh colours and figures, which maketh that is sooner inveigleth the judgment of man and carrieth his opinion this way and that, whithersoever the heart by impression of the ear shall be most affectionately bent and directed. So he's saying it's these figures that they're the ones that get to the emotional persuasion. Now, a little patch on repetition. I mean, we've already had repetition in a copier sense. Now, repetition can be exact or with variation. But everything in rhetoric is divided into this and that, or this number of things. So repetition is two sorts: exact or not exact. Quite simple. So Wilson says, if the repetition should be naked and only set forth in plain words without any change of speech or shift of rhetoric, neither should the hearers take pleasure, nor yet the matter take effect. But sometimes words twice spoken make the matter appear greater. So if you do exact repetition, on a redoubling or immediate repetition of the same word, the orator must give the same word repeated here a different sound and pronounce it the second time over far louder and stronger than the first. You understand? You understand? No. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's obvious, isn't it? But it has to be short. The examples they give are all short. You can't. Peacham gives the example of some short things. But if I would repeat the word abomination, it wouldn't sound good because it's much too long. I can only repeat short things like, oh, my soul, or something like that. But if I do anything longer, like education. If Tony Blair read Peacham, he would never have said, abomination, it just doesn't work. So, thank you, Peacham. So here we are. Epizeuxis I don't remember many names of figures, but I think epizeuxis is one worth remembering because it's this immediate repetition, and it happens so much. If you look in any vocal piece, it's happening all the time, and people just pass it by. They just go on the thing. So a word is repeated for greater vehemency with nothing in between, and it is used with a swift pronunciation, like a double stab with a weapon's point. Words of many syllables are unfit for this repetition. See what Peacham says, he really nails it. Where it's useful, where it doesn't work, it's just fantastic. So, we need some readers now. Cicero, somebody? Yeah, go on.
Thou, Antony, gavest cause of civil war to Caesar.
Yeah, and the next one, do the same.
Awake, and stand up to Jerusalem. Comfort ye, my people.
I mean, you could immediately transfer that to music, couldn't you, without any problem. Right. Now, this is another, Ascendatum. I just want to contrast where you have conjunctions and no conjunctions. That's what this is about. So, this is keeping the parts of speech together without the help of a conjunction. And remember this repeated stab with the weapon's point. This is what it's doing. So I'd like someone to read this. Who's going to read it? Quick.
Can't see it from the sound. Can't see it.
So you do it again.
But in all things approving ourselves as the ministers of God, in much patience, now getting more punch.
Bits and brackets on my idea.
All right.
So I want to signal the change in the type of speech.
Okay. But
It's
in all
not yet,
things,
yes.
approving ourselves as the ministers of God, in much patience, in afflictions, in necessities, in distresses, in stripes, in imprisonments, in tumults, in labours, in watchings, in fastings, by pureness, by knowledge, by long-suffering, by kindness, by the Holy Ghost, by love unfeigned, by the word of truth, by the power of God, by the armour of righteousness on the right hand and on the left.
Yeah. Did you get the rhythm? Is incredible, isn't it? It's the rhythm. It's that repeated the same, but with different words. Yeah. So not repeating the same thing, but the same rhythm, but with different words. Wonderful. So somebody else read these. This another without conjunctions. So the first one. Somebody read. Good.
I came, I saw, I overcame.
Yes. Okay. That's Beecham's translation. Remember, this was originally Latin. We would say conquered, wouldn't we? But Beecham translated it overcame. But and that's a figure also because it moves, isn't it? It progresses from. It gives you a sense of movement to the action. Yeah. So the next one, Cicero.
He was able to suffer cold, thirst, hunger.
Yeah. Cold. I mean, I think I would do them all the same. Cold, thirst, hunger. You know.
Cool.
But remember the weapons point. You mustn't
Same
give
place,
way
same
on the
place.
weapons point. Each one is a span. Okay, next one.
For in her is the spirit of understanding, which is holy, the only begotten, manifold, subtle, movable, clear, undefiled, evident, harmless, loving the good.
Yes. Right, so again, repeat. And often the last phrase is the longest, because that's where we knit the conclusion. Remember, knit the conclusion? That'll be longer to the cadence. So it's short, long conclusion. So, next one, somebody else read. Wonderful. Yes, go on.
Wonderful Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace.
Yeah, I didn't hear your last word.
Oh, peace.
Yeah, say the whole thing again.
Oh,
And
sorry.
give me a conclusion. You didn't conclude.
Sorry. Wonderful Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace.
Yes. That was amazing. Maybe you were trying to illustrate by your words the word peace, because you think peace is soft. Yes?
Yes. Yeah.
But in this case, we mustn't beware of word painting,
Yeah.
because what we need to do is go behind to get the emotion, not the word painting. My favourite example of this is in Dido and Aeneas, where people say, banish sorrow, whereas in fact, we shouldn't be illustrating sorrow, we should be illustrating banish. Banish sorrow! We should be lively, shouldn't we? Banish sorrow, banish. And then Dido comes in, oh, Belinda! That's where we should get, and then we get the change of emotion. But if we've already had banish sorrow, oh, Belinda, there's no contrast between the two. No. Beware of word painting. I'm sure you all read, not Roger North. You all read Roger North? He says about the fairy queen, there's a phrase which says, hush, hush. And he says, it was sung by a loud bass voice. Of course, because you don't go hush, you go, hush, shut up. You can only do that loudly, can't you? If you say, nobody's going to. But people tend to perform it softly because it's harsh, they're word painting, but the direction, the verbal intent is to tell people to be quiet. So beware word painting. That's what I'm saying. Right, that was very good. Thank you for that point. Now the use is to avoid the tedious repeating of a conjunction, partly for the better sound of the speech, partly for expedition and brevity, and you can only use it for things of like nature. So it mustn't be used as a contrast. So we saw there the lists without conjunctions are all similar, aren't they? And then we go to another gear and do the different things. So you can only use that with similar things. Now here's something that has conjunctions. So in contrast to the ones that don't have conjunctions, Polys in datum is a figure which knitteth together the parts of the oration with many conjunctions, contrary to that above, which we just. So in this case, the conjunction, usually an unimportant word, becomes important because it piles up. They talk about piling up, piling up the repetitions. So you've got your pile emphasised by the conjunction. So somebody reads, he was. Somebody? No. Yeah?
He was both an enemy to his country and a traitor to his prince, and a contender of laws, and a subverter of cities.
Yeah. Now, if you just read it without emphasising the and, you wouldn't get the effect of what he was, would you? And all those things, and he was that, and he was that. So you're really using the conjunction to emphasise. Somebody read the next one, Paul? Yeah. Anybody else? Somebody different? Somebody at the back there. Anybody at the back wants to? Eddie.
For I'm sure that neither death, neither life, neither angels, neither rule, neither power, neither things present, neither things to come, neither height, neither depth, neither any creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God.
Good. So you see the short groups of things, then the longer conclusion. Knit the conclusion. Use this effect to knit many similar things together and separate contrary matters asunder. For this reason it's called the chain of speech, for as much as every chain hath a conjunction of matter and a distinction of links. So remember this image, the chain of speech. We're going to come back to that later. It's a very common phrase that crops up a lot. So here's some more repetition. Somebody read this first phrase. Yeah, go on.
Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice.
Have another go?
Some more? When I was a child.
No, do rejoice again.
Oh, I see.
And follow the rules this time.
Right. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice.
Yes! Right, okay. So if we were singing Purcell, we sing rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. That's what you usually hear. But what we could hear is rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice, wouldn't we? Do you see something? Musically, you want to go away at the end of it. But if you're following rhetoric rules, you make a crescendo if we're following the words. So sometimes you have a tension between what the music does and what the words do. And then it's difficult, you have to choose, really. I would go with the words. Yes, Peacham says about repetition, this is really great. In the beginning to be considered, and in the end to be remembered. That's really good. So you see, each repetition has a function, it's for a purpose. And Roger North says this about repetition actually. He says, First time is preparation, the second time is to enjoy. Yeah, when you do a repeat, people say, oh well, we don't want to do a repeat. But if it's a piece they've never heard before, you've got to do the repeat because they've only heard it once. Second time, they're looking forward to what they heard the first time, or not, whatever they. Okay, somebody speak the next one.
Go ahead.
When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child.
Good. So, Peacham calls that the musical repetition. So what we're doing is looking at a phrase where some things are the same and some things are different. So what we've got to do is emphasise the thing that's different, as you did then. And a child thing is taken for granted. But sometimes repetition can be soothing, as we've got this piece of dumb poetry. So somebody read it.
All day, the same our postures were, and we said nothing all the day.
That's right. So you can make it, if the effect is soothing, that's fine. But you have to read a bit into the context. Now, just to sum up what we've been doing, these exercises, I've got a sentence without figures, and then with that sentence adorned with figures to see the difference. So somebody read the unadorned sentence, first sentence. Mary.
You call him as a witness against yourself, the laws, and the people.
Okay, now read the second part, which is engaged with figures.
You call him against yourself as a witness. You call him against the law as a witness. You call him against the people as a witness.
You see the effect of adding the figure. It's much, much more emphatic, isn't it? And you'd be much more convinced if you were on the jury, wouldn't you? Careful use of forensic. Okay. Yes, the importance of copia. Among all the figures of rhetoric, there's no one that such helpeth forward an oration and beautifieth the same with delightful ornaments as amplification. To be well stored with copia, we must be well stored in our commonplace books, ever with such good sentences are often used in this our like, which thorough art, through art being increased, helps persuasion. So he's saying that this repetition helps to persuade. And amplifying is another term they use for a version of copia. That's another way of repeating something in a different way. So it's an excellent kind of amplifying when things increased and things diminished are set together, that the one may rather beautify the other. So in poetry these would be consecutive sentences or ideas, but in music we can have them simultaneously, can't we? We can have a note in a theme in crotchets and quavers and one going along in minims and semi-briefs over the top, the same idea. So that's an advantage music has. We can either have it going along in real time or superimposed. So we've got much, much more potential for using these things in music. Just a couple of other figures. Surprise. We shall delight the hearers when they look for one answer and we make them a clean contrary, as though we would not seem to understand what they would have. Obvious case, the interrupted cadence. Contraries set together, things oftentimes appear greater. Contraries being set one against the other appear more evident. So whatever you're doing, look for contrast, look for new voice, new effect. Now, articulation, punctuation. I think this is an idea we tend to use one type of articulation when we're playing, but Wilson points out there are three, and this also comes from Quintilian. He also names three levels of articulation: at the word, at the sentence, and at the paragraph. So Wilson says, this cannot be better represented than by example of these common travellers by the highways, where they seem to allow themselves three manners of stays or easements. One on horseback, calling perchance for a cup of beer or wine, and having drunken it up, rides away, and never lights, never gets down off his horse. About noon he cometh to his inn, and there baits himself and his horse for an hour or more. That's your second level articulation, stopping for a meal. At night, when he can conveniently travel no further, he taketh up his lodging and rests himself till the morrow. So that's your third type of articulation. So he's saying, you get off, you have a drink without stopping, you get off for a meal, or you stay overnight. So, there's clearly, we can use that much more, I think, in our performances. The faucheur is talking about speed. The extraordinary volubility of the tongue without any pause is a great disadvantage also to the speaker himself, as well as an injustice to the hearer. For it does not give the auditors leisure to observe the distinction of his periods and the fine cadences that illustrate the speech with so much grace and ornament. The orator's tongue should be agreeable to the ears of his auditors, without either running faster than they can follow, or drawing out his words slower than they can have patience to attend. I think this is very good for music, just hitting the right tempo, so that the audience can understand everything that's going on. But if it's too slow, you lose track of what happened in the bar before, don't you? So this tempo has to keep things knitted together, so that the audience can relate one thing after the other as they go along. But too fast, it's true, if people playing too fast, you get so tired of listening, making that effort to follow, that you just sort of switch off, don't you? That you must be able to understand everything as it goes past. Wilson says, without delight they will not long abide, weary them and you'll lose them forever. Assuredly, it behoveth a man that must talk much, ever to have regard to his audience, not only to speak so much as needful, but also to speak no longer than they be willing to hear. Very good one. Now, just a couple of pointers about what they say about the exordium. I found this really useful, about the beginning, an entrance, two ways divided. Again, there are only two ways, apparently, that you can start a piece. First is called plain beginning, the second is a privy twining, close creeping in to win favour with much circumstance, called insinuation. And I really found this useful. When I look at a piece, it's either direct or insinuating, no argument. And it really helps when you look at a piece, you think, what's happening here? If you just think, is it that or is it that? Go, and it's just very, very simple, and you'll find it works. 99 times out of 100, you'll get the right approach. Now, how do you perform the exordium at the beginning? A low and modest voice. Work up to degrees of moderation to a higher pitch of warmth and passion. Otherwise, he would put himself out of breath at the first start for want of good conduct. And command of his voice, as would give other parts of his speech a greater force than the exordium. So you have to, it's a question of pacing yourself. Don't start too high or you'll fall flat on your face. That's what Quintilian talks about. We mustn't have lots of ornamentation at the beginning. Save that comes later. We have to state our case first, make friends with the audience. Then you can go in with the powerful stuff. So in general, I find this useful in music. Just avoid ornamentation at the beginning. This applies to any piece really. The ending, again, hints about the ending. A conclusion is the handsomely lapping up together, brief heaping up of all that was said before, stirring the hearers by large utterance and plentiful gathering of good matter, either one way or the other. And this paraphrases Quintilian, who says, in conclusion, the orator establishes his sway over the emotions of the audience, forces his way into their hearts, and brings the feeling of the jury into perfect sympathy with all his words. We shall be in a position now that we have emerged from the reefs and shoals to spread our canvas, using expressions that are magnificent and ornate. So at the end, you can pile it on all the men as much as you like, basically. And this is what the Mace says: summing up, sweetening, completing the story, the most choicest and satisfactory delight in all music. Nothing so sweet and delightful as a sweet close or cadence. And Le Faucheur, going back to the oratory book, he says you have to make a little pause between the peroration and the former part. Begin with a lower tone and a different accent. And after that, you should break forth with a louder voice and arrive at the conclusion of his speech like a vessel that's been long out to sea, had a difficult voyage, weathered many dangerous points and passages, and comes into port full sail with the greatest acclamation of joy and good cheer. And this is a paraphrase from Quintilian about the vessel being out. So he hasn't just made this up, you know. I'm aware of the time. I'm just going to jump a little bit. Question and answer. I'd like somebody to speak this. A very common thing in music is to have a dialogue. The orator dialogues with himself. So you have to invent two voices to speak with yourself. So would somebody like to read this in two voices?
Let's hear Sextilius, what he has to say. I have not brought him along with me, you say. Produce his papers, and account then in court. I have not brought them neither. Where are your brothers? Let them appear at least.
Let them appear.
Let them appear at least.
Let them appear.
At least.
Yeah, and then there's another one here, which is from Wilson. Asking another, answering ourselves. This example was used to rebuke one that had committed a robbery. So the changes of tone can really build up the accusations.
I wonder what you meant to commit such felony. Have you not lands? I know you have. Are your friends worshipful? Yes, assuredly. Were you not beloved of them? No doubt you were. Could you have wanted anything that they had? If you would have eaten gold, you might have had it. Did they not always bid you to seek to them and not to none other? I know they did. What evil hap you had? What evil hap had you then to offend in such sort, not going to your friends, which would not see you want, but seeking for that which you should not have, endangering yourself by untrue dealing, to feel the power and strength of the law when otherwise you might have lived in safeguard.
Is he committed? So you can see that's a really useful thing to use in court, isn't it? To put answers in somebody else's voice, you know, somebody else's character. Good. Now here's another double voice trick, but using two pairs to contrast. So we've got equal balanced phrases, that's another effect. And the use to repeat a word of importance, so with pleasantly to the ear, but mustn't be used too often. And the word least worthy is not the one to repeat, so you emphasise the important word. So here we've got two pairs of contrasts in equally balanced phrases. So we have to use the rhythm and the differences to pronounce the two figures. So somebody like to try this one? Well, somebody different. Yes, John Brooke.
The covetous man is ever poor. The contented man is always rich. The covetous man is an enemy to himself. The contented man is a friend to others. The covetous man is full of care. The contented man is full of comfort.
Right. Now, can you do it again and get your two voices?
A bit more.
So you need the first half of the sentence. The covetous man's horrible, and the contented man's nice.
Yeah. The covetous man is ever poor. The contented man is always rich. The covetous man is an enemy to himself. The contented man is a friend to others. The covetous man is full of care. The contented man is full of comfort.
Yeah, you got it. So you see, you have to use your voice for the colour and the emotion of the words. Right. So we're not just listening to you saying it, we're getting it here. Yeah. So when you use the different tones of voice, we're already halfway there, isn't we? Whereas if we have to translate what you say into emotion, then it's much harder for us. So this is the problem with music, is that if we just play what's there, we're relying on the audience to interpret that, to get what we mean. Whereas we already have to tell them what they're supposed to be thinking, which we must give them the emotion that we find in music. Or else they're just going to go to sleep. That's what happens most of the time. Right, and now a piece of Shakespeare again, with rhythmic repetitions. So who's going to have a go at this? Come on, somebody who hasn't had a go yet. Come on, Maury. Maury.
I can't read it.
Can't read it. It's very pale. Yeah, can you read it?
He hath disgraced me and hindered me half a minute. Laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thwarted my bargains, cooled my friends, heated mine enemies. And what's his reason? I am a Jew. Shall I stop there?
No, carry on. You can build up the...
Oh dear. Yeah.
Build up the
Hath
speed.
not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands? Organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions? Fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is. If you prick me, if you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge?
I love your pauses, but they could increase, they could be a cellorando, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I love the pauses more and then less, and so that builds on it. That's great. I mean, what I found about modern, I mean, it's a complete generalisation. Mostly Shakespeare's spoken much too fast, and as we were saying, we can't take it in, so I can't understand this if it goes so fast. It just has to be so much slower and rhythmic, so we get the text.
You have to be able to hear it, I think.
Yes.
The Shakespeare's globe glass and it's hard to hear.
Hard to hear, yes. Maybe, I mean, that's another thing. If it's too fast, and you also can't hear, it's very difficult. Here's another Shakespeare excerpt showing the repetition. So if somebody like to speak, please. I'll have my bond. Yeah, go on.
I'll have my bond, I will not hear thee speak. I'll have my bond, and therefore speak no more. I'll not be made a soft and dull-eyed fool to shake the head, relent and sigh and yield to Christian intercessors. Follow not, I'll have no speaking. I will have my bond.
Right. So we've got repetition interspersed with the copia. So we've got exact repetition, I'll have my bond, I'll have my bond, I'll have my bond at the end, just round it off. But in between, we've got the copia, we'll not hear thee speak no more, so on. So it's tied up two effects in one. Very good. Okay, I'm going to skip now to my last speaking practice. So somebody'd like to stand up and speak this, that would be great. Who's going to be a rude mechanical? Already thought. Rude mechanical wanted.
If no one else wants to be a
go
rude
on.
mechanical,
So what's, remember to follow the rules. You've got different levels of articulation. So you've got to stop after a full stop. Then the next sentence, we want a new tone of voice.
if we offend, it is with our good will. That you should think we come not to offend, but with good will. To show our simple skill that is true beginning of our end. Consider then, we come but in despite. We do not come as minding to content you, our true intent is all for your delight.
There was a stop there.
But the sentence runs on, does it
sorry,
not?
you can't see it.
It's very faint.
It's so faint. You can't read
I'll try that again. We do not come as minding to content you, our true intent is all for your delight. We are not here. That you should here repent you, the actors are at hand, and by their show you shall know all that you are like to know.
This fellow does not stand upon his points. He hath rid his prologue like a rough colt. He knows not the stop. Good moral, my lord, it is not enough to speak, but to speak true. Indeed, he hath played on his prologue like a child on a recorder. Sound, but not in government. His speech was like a tangled chain, nothing impaired, but all disorder. Shakespeare's making a point now. This rude mechanical, he hasn't had the benefit of the education. He can't understand what he's reading. He's written something, pseudo-dramatic, and the courtiers listening are just making a mockery of him because he's a tangled chain, doesn't understand speech at all. Right. So that's the end of my speaking practice. If you want to really get obsessed with the figures, go to this website. It's absolutely brilliant. Just Google Silver Rhetoric, but make sure you've got a couple of hours before you do it. It is true. Getting lost in rhetoric. It's just marvellous because it gives you all the sorts of examples I've given you and names of the figures, and it's wonderful to browse. Now, what I'd like to do is hear a piece of music, and I want to see if you can hear any of what I'm talking about. So if the people volunteers would come in, they're going to play a bird four-part fancy. Then I'd like you to say what you've heard in it that might relate to what I've been speaking of. I'm going to talk about 2 points, just so that much. The first of all, the exordium. What sort of exordium is it?
You're insinuating.
Oh,
Wow.
insinuating. Yeah, insinuating. Who's insinuating first part?
I am.
You're insinuating. But then immediately we get a contrast. It's quite unusual, isn't it? Because usually you get the theme and then another voice coming in, and the voices build up. But immediately here we get a counter subject, as it were. But I want you to be more different.
Okay.
You're a bit fluffy.
I was
for me.
insinuating.
Can you be? No, you need to be
More direct.
solid.
Okay.
I think you're solid.
Right.
You're moving, you're wavering, and you're a laser beam.
Okay.
Right, but be a voice.
Yes.
Yeah, so sing. Don't go away on the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get the contrast better. Try the beginning. Yeah, don't creep, no creep.
Oh, you said insinuating.
Yes, yeah, but we have to know when the notes start.
Okay.
No, it doesn't matter. Do it once again. Be cool. No, don't try and be expressive.
Okay.
You know, it's cool. This expression here. You're having a conversation between you two and you two. It's often. What another thing I like to consider is attitude. Am I agreeing or disagreeing with what's just been said? So I think you're agreeing. That's very nice. It's a respond. Does that mean that you have to have two things going on? Not just the thing that's going on here, but what's just happened and what's going to happen in a minute.
So I think it needs to be more exaggerated, doesn't it?
Yes. Not in a
with violence.
absurd way.
Yes.
But yes, I agree. So just play you two. First play your book and then just play.
I'm on half bar.
Just doesn't matter about where. Just after her. Just play your book.
Right.
It's too fluffy. Solid. Slower bow. Yes, slower bow. Like a plain song. The same exact repetition. What do we do? Play louder. Yes? So exact repetition. Now, so that was the first point, is always the exordium. And I'd just like to look at that place where you all play together. But 46 or something.
44?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's right. So it's 44. Okay, play roll 44, just for about 3 bars, yeah.
Right on bar. Bar 44.
So you've got 3 things there. Then the first one, you all play together. And we find in the first book of musical figures, written by Burmeister in 1608 or something, German book, he not only takes the figures I've been talking about, but he makes up new ones for music. And this is one of the ones he makes up, where everyone plays the same thing at the same time. And he says this effect is revealed by its context. And what I found by experience, and you probably know, that this is always happens in the middle of a burst of counterpoints. So it's surrounded by counterpoint. Then suddenly everyone plays the same thing. And that's the figure. But you get counterpoint, counterpoint, stop. Oh, they're all playing together. And he says that is the most important thing. So often in a chorus, the words that the chorus speak at that point will be very important. So they should be emphasised. So da da da, that's suddenly strong. And then the next phrase you get I think the emphasis has changed. You often think, this phrase starts the same as the last one, but it's longer, so you have to move the emphasis further on. This is a very common thing in rhetoric. You get a short phrase and a longer phrase with the point further on. So da 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 da, isn't it? Oh, da 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 da. Then change. It's more conciliating, isn't it? So can we have those three things more distinct? The longer note is the stronger.
Yeah.
The more changes you have in rhetoric, the better. Always look for the moment of change. Change is good, and it's written in. You just have to find it. Go for the long note, and louder at the beginning. Da da da, more assertive.
Sure.
It's conciliatory, isn't it? I shouted at you, and then maybe I didn't mean that after all. It's sort of the catching, but I think we need you not to interrupt the.
Sure.
Start on the second crotchet of that bar.
Yeah.
So allow the major to make its effect. Okay. Right, that happens a lot, it doesn't it, in pop music, so watch out for that. And the only other point I want to make is there's so much copia. What I find most often happens is the first note of the theme is changes in length, which happens here. Dee da da dee da 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 da. It goes from a minute to a crotchet, or even longer, or that. I think the shorter one is more emphatic myself. Because the first one goes da dee da 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 da, and then it's da 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 dee. That's more impatient, isn't it? The short upbeat. Can we find a place where that happens? Yes. Should we go from 19? Oh, maybe this is a better place. 17. 17 for a few bars. Just hear the differences in the upbeat. You just emphasise all the upbeats, the long ones and the short ones, and then we'll hear the difference. You're a little bit too reticent now to hear the difference. Do the same place and just make a point of the long or the short upbeat. Had the same body in different clothes. So actually, I didn't mind that he played much more aggressively, because it might be the same. Oh, we have to play it all the same. It's the same. We have to play it the same. No, we're people having a conversation. We're putting our different points view. I mean, that's one way of doing it. I'm not saying that's the right way, but I think we should experiment more with doing things like that, bringing out the differences, not trying to match everything and hide. When you try and match all the time, you're actually dampening the effects. So that's a really good exercise to look for when you're rehearsing, to look for the differences and bring them out. Has everybody, should I say, found something to use in their playing? I mean, that's what I'm not. Yeah. I mean, length of phrases, articulation, sequences, not just looking at the note you're playing, but seeing it in relation to what you've just done and what's coming next. I think that's the most, for me, thing that works most. Okay, so even if you've taken one idea away to try at home, that's great. I wanted it to be useful. Useful. Thank you. It did not go on longer than the audience's one. Thank you all for coming. Being brave. Try it at home. You know.
Thank you very much.
Go home and read the Bible to yourself.
Judy, thank you so much. We do have a bit of time because this I allowed extra time for this session. Just wondering if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, can I make a comment? Thank you for that very final observation, really. I think you sort of challenged us all as consort players who spent the last generation or longer trying not to highlight difference in the same figures, and I think challenged us to be more like sort of stage actors and be different and bring different styles of.
Yes, I agree, because we always try to copy one another, don't we? But now, yes, it turns on its head, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. But it's these small differences.
Yeah.
Like literally the difference between a dotted rhythm and an equal rhythm. That can make it, or an interval.
Yes, because Jenkins has that, doesn't he?
Yeah, all the time. Or an interval like a minor sixth or a fifth. There's a huge difference between playing those two intervals in expression. And you can have two identical phrases except for that one interval, and that changes the whole thing. I mean, this is Erasmus. I thank you, Erasmus. He showed me such a lot. It's such a great book, and he's got such a sense of humour. You know, it's great. Yeah.
I have a question. Do repetitions ever get quieter? Do they always increase?
Yes.
Or is there the argument that actually by doing something that's repeated quieter, one draws the audience in?
Yes, I think there. Yes, I don't want to say make any rules that it's always like this. But what I'm trying to fight against is the default echo. I hate that. You know. If something's repeated, oh, let's do an echo. No, let's do the reverse. Like the repeat piano syndrome. I just, you know, that's all gone. I mean, it's just
I have a question about how do you navigate when there are multiple rhetorical figures going on in a piece of polyphony and we have equal voices. Are there moments where we're supporting someone else's figure, or are we always doing our own thing? Is there, you know, especially when things, you know, you have consort music which suddenly becomes like a one vocal line in other consort works, for example, like how do you navigate?
Yeah, I think in counterpoint you've got to be your own voice, haven't you? So keep the integrity of each voice. I mean, the possibilities, even with four parts, are so huge, aren't they? That you can't comprehend it. I mean, that's why composers are so. It's incredible. This piece, this simple piece. It's not a simple piece, but the amount of work that's gone into working out all the parts. I mean, I think keep the integrity of the part, and you'll find. Don't always try to match what someone else is doing, because they might have something which contrasts, like we had at the beginning there. So don't try and match too much, but stick to your own voice, whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, going back to your repetitions, I think repetitions can fade out, obviously, but you have to just look at the context and see. Because if they're obviously building to a climax, you can say, right, that's where we're going. That's probably. But often they just peter out, don't they? Repetitions just peter out, and then something can interrupt. Look at what happens next. If you think the repetitions are fading out, see if there's an interruption there, because there might be after the repetitions are finished. I mean, this is what you can decide. It's what you make of it. So you could, some places you could make it work both ways. You could make it repetitions peter out or grow. Try them both and see which is, you could make one work or the other. What do you decide? Yeah, I mean, that's what's, when Mace said, music expresses more than words, I think we've got the perfect platform for that. There is multiple voices, because the potential there is incredible, isn't it? Up to six voices. Yeah. And I mean, when they were playing, I just felt that we couldn't not listen, could we? Our attention was so held by everything that was going on, and we were listening to everything so clearly. It's just, I mean, I think that more people should listen to bar music. They become accustomed to listening better than they are, and especially if we're playing in that sort of way, we can engage the audience more than we probably do.
Any other questions? When you were setting the context at the beginning, you said something about Commonwealth from Elizabethan times. I didn't quite catch what the...
Yes, all these books, the exercises that children were doing at school, writing compositions and so on, they're all, even the Latin grammar, I've got a Latin grammar from Eton, and it's all about, honouring thy father and thy mother, and things, moral questions, and they use the grammar and rhetoric to convey all the ideas, Christian morals, and then for the common good, you get that all the time. The exercises are all, how can we get into, rhetoric was used in society to promote civic values, good civic values. This comes from Cicero, of course, because he was the first person in the Renaissance to be adopted as the civic humanism element, for the common good. And that carried on, especially in Elizabeth's reign and into the 17th century. It was very much the Commonwealth cropped up all the time in these. I mean, one of the examples in the Rhetoric is an argument between a shepherd and a wolf. Who has the better right, for these sheep? Yes. And the argument, is about the Commonwealth, not the selfish wolf, but the shepherd who's looking after the society. It's really funny. Apparently, it comes from Demosthenes. It's a sort of standard topic for discussion. But Reynold writes it up in the context of the English civil society. It's great. I mean, if you can bear it, it's really worth reading these books. They're all obviously on Google Books or something online. But a lot of them are done in facsimile, nice facsimile. But the British Library does a Peachum, very nice little paperback Peachum, which is quite easy to read. And Erasmus is a bit more difficult, because there's a very expensive edition in English, otherwise you have to read it in Latin. But I don't think that's online. He's worth reading. But if you were to read one, I'd read Peacham, because he's so thinking about the audience all the time. This is effective, this doesn't work, do this, you know. We must get to the heart, we must get to their hearts, you know, affect them.
I was going to say, when this is written up, would it be possible to just put in the main names? Like Peacham and so on?
Yes, yes, I will. I'm going to write, Peter Holman's asked me to write it for the journal.
Yeah.
So you'll get all, it'll be based on this information.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then
no,
you'd be-
I'm not going to remember them.
No, I'll write it all up. I'll give the main text and the sort of quotations, I think.
Yeah. And then I just want to say, some of it, I kept thinking of people in the House of Commons, you know, especially Tories who've been to schools where they were, you know, and you could hear some of them just talking, and it's amazing. Repetition and all these different things.
Yeah, but they tend to stick to the same things, like the three. It's so boring. There's so much else they can do. They tend to just do the same thing. And of course the delivery is so convincing in some of them that you just get so annoyed. You think, it's not what you're saying, it's the way you're saying it, which is the trick. Actually, if you've got that trick, we're not listening. We're thinking about the personality, the persona, and not about the content.
Right, thank you very much. I think we'll take a break. We'll another one.